There we go, red.
Spelling
Spelling bee.
trophy there. We got a trophy there. Just wondering what.
It says Holy Cross Yell Award. I'm not sure what that means.
Y-E-L-L?
Y-E-L-L, yes.
Interesting.
Yell Award. I'm not sure. All right, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm going to try to integrate a little bit with pictures and note stuff and see what happens. Anyway, your Gospel of John. Okay, I know. You know, you build up, right? You can't look at history and culture and literature and language like bumper stickers. If you do, well, you end up like modern education. I know, I'm sorry, but you know, we that's the whole point of learning stuff is so you learn it, right, and not just junk. I would hope, but to do that, I know it takes a little bit to get to the actual things. But next week, I put it on it that we look at rabbinic understanding of Messiah, but I'd also think we can get into a little bit of the translation of John. But to build into it, right, we had to know the history, we have to know a little bit about the language and the culture and all that kind of stuff so we can understand it. And so I said, you know, I'm going to give you a preview, that is this Logos to Telos, because you'd say, well, you know, really what we want to do is look at the Logos to Telos as we go, which we will, right? We'll look at it within that context. But we have got to really change our thinking, if we can, a little bit, because we are so expecting of intro, body, conclusion. And I should have mentioned last week, the Hebrew is always synopsis, body. Synopsis, body, intro, body, conclusion. If you're reading as a Hebrew, and remember, okay, we are going to delve into this, but this is a big deal. The disciples and the apostles are Hebrew guys, right? And they're Hebrew guys steeped in, to a degree, Phariseeism, but at least rabbinic training. And you say, why is that important? I don't know if I've made this point in a while or made this point enough, but you have four sects of Judaism right now in the first century. And you're going to have the fifth. The fifth, you know, by this time of John, the fifth has occurred. It's Tin Hodos, the way. And we'll see the way expressed. We always see it expressed in all the Gospels and all the things because that is the name of this group. But before that, you have the Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Zealots. And how do we know? This list comes out of Josephus. There are two others that were listed by Irenaeus, but we have no identification of them. We're not sure where they came from. We don't know if they're late date or what. And I don't remember them right offhand. But, you know, we have these groups, and they think differently, but they are Jewish groups. And when we have the Pharisees, we know a little bit about the Pharisees. Now, you think everybody is a Pharisee, right? No, there were probably, and in my notes, I just read it. I think there was anywhere between 3,000 and 6,000 Pharisees in all of Israel. That's not a lot. Because we know there's 1 million people coming to, we know there's about 20,000 people in Jerusalem at any normal time. And about 1 million come during the Pilgrim Festivals. So, 1 million, and if you say 3 to 6,000, not many. And depending on who you believe, right, we think there were about 4 Pharisees on the Sanhedrin, because most of the Sanhedrin were Sadducees. Now, why is this important? What are the Pharisees?
They're the teachers in the synagogues.
They are the rabbis. The Pharisees are basically the rabbis. So when you see Pharisee, it's the rabbis. And this is really interesting because our view of Christ and our view of the Gospels is you're walking through Jerusalem and everybody you see is a Pharisee, right? But it's not. They're a very small number. And by the way, our idea is how many Sadducees do you think there are? Probably not that many, because remember the Sadducees are the priests and the Levites. That's it. And the priests and Levites are basically given the cities, but we already have international commerce, we have all kinds of stuff. Just to make it very clear, we're talking about, okay, who are the other guys? So I got Sadducees, not a huge group. I got Pharisees, not a huge group. I got Essenes. That's an interesting group, right?
So Lyle, where's the general population? Are they followers of Pharisees? Are they followers of? Okay, so Miriam lives in Jerusalem. Does she consider herself a Pharisee? Does she consider herself a Sadducee? Does she consider herself an Essene? Like, where are the regular people that aren't rabbis or priests?
That's the point I'm getting to, right? Because, yeah. Now, this is the thing. The average male is trained by Pharisee because you go to rabbi school. Every kid, every boy, right, is trained from what age? I don't think they tell us the low end, but by the time they do their bar mitzvah at 13, they are supposed to have memorized the Torah. Memorize. Not the Tanakh, the Torah. Verse 5. They got to memorize. Because they really can't read, they're using mnemonics, right, in the scroll to read it. But every boy has gone through rabbinic school. Every boy. Yes, sir.
And once again, when you say memorize, it's not, they can't sit down and just go through all the books. They know how to read them. They remember they can only remember them if they're looking at the
They
scroll
have a
and reading.
visual aid, in other words.
Okay.
I'm just always wondered about this because 5 books of the Bible, that's a lot of memorizing.
Well, okay, what you said, now this is something else we've got to wrap our brains around. Okay? Because, yes, the reason they have the mnemonic, the reason they use the scroll, the mnemonics, right, the consonants, was to ensure they did not make a mistake. But yet, when I say memorize, they had it memorized, but it's kind of like the way we might memorize it, right? You think about it, okay? When you're a kid, you memorize all these scripture, and then they kind of get blank to you, but then you go back, and you start reading, you go, oh, yeah, I remember, and you get going, right? So I suspect that they did, but the problem, you see the problem is, right? Today, if you brought your Masoretic, I didn't bring my Masoretic text. If you brought your Masoretic text, right, into the synagogue, would they let you read it? Even if you had it memorized? No, they wouldn't let you read it. Why? Because it's not the scroll. It's not the Torah scroll. The Torah scroll cannot have pointlets. It cannot have Masoretic text. It has to be that scroll. And the thing is, you have to have it memorized, not just, what are you memorizing? It's not just the words. It's the expression. It's where the sentences stop and end. It's where the paragraphs stop and end. It's everything, right? Because it's where the words are, right? Because it's not, we have our writing. Look at writing. What if I just strung this all together? You'd be like, what? But we're used to, this is student writing, right? In the ancient world, where you separate the words. Because you can't afford to separate the words on a page. So, yeah, this is a great question. I would argue that once a person memorized, they would probably be very cautious. And they might do it in their mind, but they would not, would they do it in their mind? Well, yeah, people did not, okay, I was thinking about this all this morning because of some of the texts that we had, it talks about the forms. I think it was in Corinthians. It was when they talk. Oh no, it was maybe one of the Psalms. The forms of, for example, the bread and wine. Do you realize how far you have to go down the path of understanding literacy, having the ability to have words, to have forms like bread and wine, and then turning or expressing the bread and wine not just as forms of food, but forms of spiritual relief or forms that represent spiritual relief? I mean, we're talking from Protozoic to God right here, right? And for human beings to get there, you just can't go, bang, today I have a letter alpha, and then tomorrow I have a full complement of understanding of the spiritual, right? I mean, it's like God himself training us and bringing us up to the point where we have the ability to understand these things. So, I know I didn't mean to go on kind of a weird tangent, but it's to me, it's the amazing power of knowledge, right? And these people, they did not have the ability at that time. They couldn't pray. People did not pray quietly. You know, we tell kids, pray quietly, think quietly. They didn't. This is a whole new idea that you can actually think inside your head, right? I mean, it's impossible for us to imagine. It's impossible, you know, remember I told you the Greeks, they got sarx, suke, and pneuma. The Greeks believe that every moment you are thinking, if you aren't thinking, you're dead. If you aren't thinking, you're an animal, right? So you are thinking every moment. That was the beginning of this whole idea of human ability to do things in their own mind. And you wonder why people did such stupid things in the past. Well, you wonder why people do stupid things today. 99.9% of the time is because nobody's planning. They're not even thinking about it. Wait a second. If you just thought about this for 2 seconds, right? Do you tell your kids that? Tell your kids that. It's a good thing to tell them. Just think about it, right? No, anyway. But we need to see if we can get this idea in our minds about logos to telos. And so what I did is I put together, you know, we're going to look at, and I'll see if this works. I don't know if it'll work or not. But let's talk about a couple of words. And I mention these words. You've got to keep mentioning them. This is E-G-O, ego, ego. Where's my ego? This is the word, this is the construction I in Greek. And this is one of the rarest words you will find in Greek writing, in Greek speaking, in the ancient world, because we've talked about this before. And I'll mention something in a minute about this, but this is ego, this is imi. This is literally I am. Imi is the form of is, right? Is, and it's what do we call that word? Is a construction of
Beaver.
what's that?
It's one of the beavers.
Well, right, it's a beaver, but it's
Personal
a
pronoun?
what's that? It's
Personal pronoun?
well, I is personal pronoun, but it is the statement of existence. It is a word that in most languages, the reason you need the, if you think about it, I am is an unnecessary, or is an unnecessary word that has great necessity in almost every language to a degree. If you remember Hebrew, how many times do we see the I am form or the is form or the be form? Almost zero, right? Almost zero. Because it was considered unflattering and not good writing. In America, or in English, or in modern languages, especially Romance languages, languages after Latin, for some reason, and I'm going to try to explain why, we got into this big time use of is. Is the verb of existence, but there's a word for it. I can't remember it right off the top of my head. I've written about this before. It expresses that it expresses an existence. Like I am a man. I am a teacher. I'm a whatever. I am who, you know. It's your name. But when you write, what's the number one word you're trying to get rid of when you write? All the is forms. You'd like to get rid of the be forms from all your writing because instead of saying I was here, you know, you'd rather say I came here. I taught there. I did this there, because those are action words, right? Where is not an action word at all.
Google calls it a linking verb.
Linking verb, but there's another word for it too. We use in English to talk about its use. But yeah, it's a linking. That's not a very good term because it is a linking word in English, right? We use it, okay, I'm not going to go into all the verb forms in English. I wish we had our verb form teacher here, we'd get it all. You know, you can fill the board, you know, to be, right, and all the verb forms.
Was, were, be, being, been, you know, those are the big verbs.
Exactly, right? And you got has been, then been, me been, you been, other been, God's been. Anyway, the thing that's important is this. In ancient Greek, in normalized ancient Greek, imoegi is a statement of existence that is very rarely used. It means absolutely. If you say, I am X, that's a statement of absolute, that is supposed to be a statement of absolute fact. People do not use this incautiously and correctly, and we know that when we see the imoegi, egoemi form in Hebrew is Yahweh, right? Yahweh is the name of God. So how often do you think they use that, you know? Hey, Billy, who are you? I am. Ah, stone the kid, right? Because you can't say the name of God. So the Greeks didn't see it quite like that. They were generally going to stone you for saying, I am. But yet, it is very important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why it changed. This one is S-E-M-E-I-A, Semea. Simeon is what I put on there. This means signs. And, you know, how do you interpret signs? It's an indication, especially ceremonially or supernaturally. It's a Greek holy word. I haven't talked much about holy words, Greek sacred words. There are Greek sacred words. What does that mean? Those are words that are commonly not used except out inside a religious context. You see them crop up every now and then. You see them kind of misused in some instances because people, if you try to read when we say Simeon, a sign. Okay, we're not talking about I'm holding a sign up. We're not talking about we're talking about wonders and miracles. And I'm not going to go into wonders and miracles at the moment, but wonders and miracles. And there is a difference between wonders and miracles, and they basically would be considered signs. And in the Greek worldview, okay, now why does it say ceremonially versus supernaturally? Well, you might be able to guess. What did they do anybody have any idea what they did at Delphi? Or there were 7 oracles. There's 7 oracles. And the Delphic oracle, we know a little bit about the Delphic oracle. We think the other oracles were somewhat similar. What did the Delphic oracle do? Yeah, we think that it was a she. The Delphic oracle was usually always a she. That the priestess would breathe in stuff coming out of a vent in the Delphic area. Now, apparently, it's been closed off because these things are caused by volcanic, right? And so a little earthquake here and there will shut down your whatever you're smelling. But we do know that it sometimes killed them, dead. But that they had euphoric experiences and spoke, and sometimes they couldn't speak, which is we know in history, and I don't have all the sources, but we know from history, from Diogenes and from other writers, that the Delphic oracle occasionally would not be able to speak, and therefore the Athenian priests, who basically were controlling Delphi in the major period before we're talking about, would interpret her words. So the high priest of Athens, and sometimes, usually they say when the Delphic oracle could speak, that her words were almost always true. But when the Athenian priests kind of helped her, they weren't so hot, So, but you say, hey, Sparty, give all your gold to Athens. That's a good idea, right? Yeah, come on, baby. How about some ships there? We need some help. Anyway, when you control the Delphic oracle, it's a pretty cool thing. So a reason it probably died out. And by the way, if you've ever been to Delphi, what's the most beautiful treasury there? Ruthenian treasury. It's still standing. It's really beautiful. Anyway, so wonders and miracles, the signs. You see what this is, right? Supernatural or ceremonial sign. Why do you think Strong's, Vines, and those, well, not so much Vines, but Strong's and some of our modern interpreters said ceremonially or supernaturally? Well, remember, we're talking about animism and pantheonic paganism. Please do not forget. We were talking about animism and pantheonic paganism, right? So what makes everything work? Spirits. So the Delphitic oracle, why does she oracle? Because of the gods, right? Because the gods. There's no other reason. It's not psychotic experience. It's not mental experience. It is the gods giving her the words. And so in the modern era, we would call it ceremonial because we don't want to believe in the gods or spirits or anything giving stuff, right? On the other hand, you see, we as Christians, and I hate to bring this up, but I will. Christians, we have a conundrum. We know the supernatural exists in God, right? But what is the supernatural? And guess what? I'll just throw this out. For thousands of years, from the beginning of creation, there's somebody trying to mess you up about spirituality and your knowledge of spirituality. Just saying. So, but there is supernatural. But what is the supernatural? Right? And we say it's God, and that's what we're trying to understand within the construct of God, what God tells us. And like I said before, it takes a long ways to go from an alpha to a spiritual understanding of God in bread and wine. So we're on a conundrum here. We're on a thing. Now, let me look at. I'm going to go over to my. Let's see. Oh, did it die? It turned itself off. Let's make it work. And I'll see if I can show you some words. If this doesn't work, we'll. I know it won't work when we do translations.
It says switch.
I have to turn this on. See, you'll find itself. It should come right up. Hey, okay. Now I'm going to talk just a little bit about this next week, but I wanted to remind you because I mentioned it before. I know there's lots of words here, but focus on this. Remember we talked years and years, years ago, many times, I mentioned this before, Pardes. Pardes. It's an acronym that's used by the rabbinic rabbis, and I'll talk more about this. Next week I'll mention it a little bit. If my notes are messed up or not spelled right or whatever, don't worry too much about it. But the Pardes stands for Pishat, Remez, Dirash, and Sod. And this is the way rabbis today, and when did they start? They didn't really start interpreting the Torah and the Tanakh this way until around the 1400s, we think, around the 1400s, maybe a little bit later than that. But when they do, Pisat is the plain literal sense of a verse in its context. Remez is an allegorical, symbolic meaning only hinted at in the text. Dirash is a homiletic interpretation to uncover an ethical or moral lesson thought to be implicit in the text. And Sod is a secret, esoteric, or mystical interpretation by the Kabbalists. And you may have read, you may have studied or read it. There's some real popular stuff now about interpreting the scripture and secret interpretations, right? Those would be Sod interpretations. The reason I want to mention this is because we think that during, especially, the looking at things as Pishat, as plain literal sense, has not always been popular in Judaism. And if you wonder why, especially in this period, and you say, we're going to see it over and over again. Remember, we're going to see it more than you imagine, especially as we look in John, because and I've been through John up through Nicodemus, and the misunderstanding that Nicodemus has is very interesting. And when we get there, we'll see it. But what I want you to be especially aware of is when you have a synopsis body understanding that is focused on Remez, Dirash, or Sod, and really Remez and Dirash are kind of the thing we're talking about, as opposed to a Pishat. So what am I trying to say here? You would expect that everybody who memorized the Torah, right? They'd all memorized it. All the Pharisees, the rabbis, every guy here would have memorized the Torah. And by the way, let me tell you something. Ladies, don't feel excluded. You know why? Talk to a rabbi's wife. And you know what that rabbi's wife has already done? She's memorized the Torah and Tanakh, probably. Because one of the greatest jokes one of the great Jewish jokes, okay, and if you were in the Jewish community, you know this, is the rabbi's wife knows the scriptures better than the rabbi, and sometimes corrects them. And this is a long-standing rabbinic joke. I'm not kidding. So, because a woman wasn't necessarily trained in the rabbi thing, because it's a persuasive because it's so much in the culture, right? It's important, and women aren't dumb. They're pretty smart about things like that, right? And so I think that's pretty interesting that you see this. This is the old style learning technique, right? You teach to a person what happens. All the other kids want to know, right? And it's really bad when all the other kids are smarter than you are, and then, right? Because we know women. All right. Does anybody here know that women are better at literature, writing, and words? Do you know that? You didn't know that?
I've known that for a long time as a teacher.
I just say, yeah. Women have this thing about words that guys don't, and it's like, wow, they understand the world better and differently than guys. Yeah, they do, and that's why all the Brontes, what is this about the Victorians? All of them are females and writing all these books, right? And you get a couple of Dickens guys, and that's about it. So anyway, I'm just saying, this is important because our thinking about this is that everyone's thinking the same. And the rabbis may be thinking the same, but as we saw, what are the people thinking, right? And the rabbis are thinking of kind of an esoteric. Now, let's move down a little bit. Let's see. Like I said, I don't know if this will help, but we can look at John. All right. Okay. Let me see what I got here for John. I don't know if it'll help to look at it. If it doesn't help to look at words, it's okay. We proved that we could conclude that what we have in the Gospel of John, and the Gospel of John is a historical document. We proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt. We proved that it's better than, okay, if you're going to pull out Josephus or Pliny or any of that stuff, okay, pull out John, because we have a historical account. And it is historical logos to telos. So a logical argument to an unstated telos. The Greek literature, why does it say not based? It is based in this model. That is what Greek literature and dialects are, is a logos to telos. They are not necessarily a model of history. Okay? But they are dialogues that are supposed to be repeating the historical words of, for example, Socrates. I don't know why it says not.
You said it. It's right.
Is that right?
Right above it says gospel is simply a record of history, and then down below it's not based on it. I think you're in agreement.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I don't like to necessarily show notes, because it's better to type notes than I can make my points clear better. So like I said, I don't know if this is helpful or not. The point of this is that the narratives in Greek, like if you go read Herodotus or Theodocles, those are narratives, right? Historical narratives. And so they will tell you, okay, I, Herodotus, saw this. I did this. I experienced this, and then they may bring in, some explanation. A priest of Amun-Ra told me this. I mean, that is in Herodotus. So-and-so told me this. And so you get that. But what we have in the Gospels is we have this dialogue model, and we also in Greek literature have the dialogue model. And by the way, they're all logos to telos. They're all a logical argument to a unstated conclusion. And that's the point. Other literature, our literature is not written the same way. We don't approach it the same way. So, and that's the point. We know the gospel is not organized the way we would expect in a good English. John is not organized around dialogues. John does include dialogues, and dialogue is very important in John. But it's organized around narratives. And the focus of the narratives is the 7 signs and the 7 specific I am statements. This is why I brought that up. The semeion and the ego eimi statements are the most important part in John. So, this is, it provides for us historical legal proof. And the point, okay, now, if you don't understand, I'm not trying for full understanding here, right? What we're trying for right now is we're going to overview, and if you had your little note here, right? I mean, or I carry around with you all the time with your pocket. No, if you have your note and you go, okay, as we study, we look at the signs, right? And we say, how do the signs fit into this logos to Telos? I'm not going to profess to tell you exactly at this moment that it would take 12 hours of explaining to get from one to the other, right? So what we're going to do is, as we go through John, we're going to see how each logos to Telos and how each point fits into it. But the point is that this is not like English. In English, we would expect, okay, I got an intro, body, conclusion, and here I'm going to talk about the signs, and then I'm going to give it a conclusion, right? That's not the way it works. The signs, in a logos to Telos, each sign, each narrative, each point in the dialogue drives to the next. It drives to the next. It doesn't conclude. It builds, it builds, it builds, it builds, it builds, and then at the end, what are you supposed to do? Yes, yes, you said it. You know, when I wrote for a university, I wrote a thing of my teaching technique. What do you want for your teaching technique? My teaching technique is specifically the aha moment. And I wrote it in my thing. I said, what I want is that everybody in class, I hope, at some point in class, you have an aha moment. I'm trying to throw out some stuff here so you can, but that's the point, and that's Greek writing. You know, that you would get to the end, Aesop's fable, right? You get to the end of the fable and you go, aha! And you say, I figured it out, even if you didn't write down the moral that may be totally wrong. But anyway, right? So that's the point. So, you know, these are historical legal proofs. John refers to these as witnesses of divinity. We'll see that. So this is what the study of John must be. It focuses on the signs and the I am statements that frame them. And they are narrative-based. What's the word I use? They're organized around the narrative, but they are full of dialogue. Remember I told you, this is a new type of literature. And we'll see how new this is. This is beautiful literature because, you know, we get a context. Jesus is here, and then it says, Jesus said this. Or this guy said this, or that guy said this. And so we'll get a full context of narrative and dialogue put together. John, yeah, I got some stuff here. I'm going to talk more about John. One thing I want to mention to you, I'm going to bring it up here. What's that? Did I miss something?
I said, unfortunately, I usually just have duh moments.
Oh, duh moments. Oh, that's good. I like that. Oh, good. I got a bump. All right. Now, I should probably trade over. I can't write on this board, but if you remember, what is the most important thing to the Jews? It is the word. Remember, what is the most important word to the if I were to characterize the Jewish people with a single word about salvation or about stuff, what word would that be? You remember that word? In Greek, it's arena. Shalom.
Oh,
Shalom. The Jewish people greet everyone. Shalom doesn't really mean peace. Shalom means the stillness on the top of the water. means water that has no ripples on it, water that is not disturbed. That is shalom. So when I say shalom, and in Greek the word is arena. When I see arena in Greek, I should always think about Jewish community and Jewish shalom. That's the way it works. So when you're reading the Gospels, because they're not writing in Aramaic, are they? When you see arena, peace. And like I said, they don't mean what we think. Because arena is always used, and arena is also not, does not mean the same thing in English as it does in Greek. And we'll get to that at some point when we look at arena. All right, what word is the Greek's favorite word? You know it.
Charis.
Charis. We say charis. Charis. Diakosuni is cool, but charis is, they would say charis comes, or charis would come from diakosuni. Charis is grace. We translated grace. It doesn't mean grace. It means graciousness. But, okay, it's a greeting. It's a passing. It's a goodness. It's a blessing. It means everything. And we've turned it in the church to some crazy word that's really beautiful, right? It's an important, beautiful word. We know what it means in English, in our state when I say grace. But, hey, if I greeted you on the street, I'd say, charis. And if I met Mary, I'd say, charis. And if I, Mary, charis. And Jesus, charis. And you go, well, you're charising everybody. Yeah, because in Greek, charis is like a blessing. It's a greeting. It's a blessing. It's a positive, very euphoric kind of thing. It's seeing a friend, an old friend, a new friend, whatever. But that is the word that has become grace, which means a whole different truck to us from 2,000 years of Christianity. But when the Greeks were not interested necessarily in peace, in shalom or arena. They want charis. That's kind of like, if you think about it, that's the pleasantness of human beings and human culture and human interaction, right? And we expand that to we would say that charis represents the beauty of God's interaction in humanity, right? Because we would say you can't have full charis. You have charis without God, right? And the Greeks, I think, would agree. That's what they were looking for. Diakosuni is the answer to that. Balance, right? In the Greek worldview, the balance of this charis. You can't have too much. If you have too much bad, that's really bad, right? You have too much good, they would say that's not necessarily good, right? And by the way, you know this. How can you have euphoric moments if you don't have moments of horrible trial, right? And some people that have the worst moments of trial have the greatest euphoric moments ever, right? And we see that in writing, we see that in humans, in saints. Paul, beaten, hated, and yet find euphoric moments with God, right? And yet we know he's beaten down. So that's real life. Now, the other ones are Roman friends. Doxa. Yeah, never forget doxa. Doxa is glory. Guess what we want? Guess where we are? We're all Romans. Yeah, we're Greeks that have become Romans. The Greeks are great thinkers, but the Romans are great doers. And we are great doers that like to be, maybe not think as much as we should, but we're looking for doxa, glory. So when you see the word doxa, you should always think, I'm looking at Roman thinking, Roman worldview. So we're going to see this coming out. Now, I also want to mention this. Okay, to have doxa, what do you got to have? That's a joke, but ego. You got to have ego. Egoemi, right? So when do we start seeing the use of the, I almost had it to my tongue, the existence verb, the verb of, the I am verb, it's the existence verb. There's a word, I'm looking for the word. Anyway, we start seeing that word in Latin. And the reason we start seeing that word in Latin is because to have doxa, to have glory, what do you got to do? I am glorious, right? I am Coolio. I am the guy, right? I am his Caesar. So, you can't imagine a Greek guy standing up and saying, I am Socrates, right? That don't work. But you can certainly see what, Tiberius Caesar stand up and say, hey, I'm Caesar, do what I say or you're done, right? All those guys are like that, right? All of them, all of them, even in Shakespeare, read Shakespeare, you know what I'm talking about. They're all full of themselves, and we are too. So should not be unusual to us that suddenly ego eimi forms come out. And I think we're going to see that in John. So that would help us understand John a little bit. I also want to point out that think about John. If you read through John recently, or the other Gospels, which disciple had the greatest access to the high-end dupa heads? Like Caiaphas. He was related somehow, right? He got in when Peter and the other guys couldn't get in. Remember Peter sitting out in the thing and lying? And John is in the group? How did he get in? Right? So, remember, this is a society that we've talked about it. You know, it's Hellenized, it's moving to the thing. So I'm going to give a little bit. Let's just see. We're going to translate this, but this is the, I've called this before, this is the theory. If you remember when we looked at the Greek documents before, we said that Greek documents are usually, you don't see an intro, body, conclusion, but you see a theory, a statement of theory, a statement of proof. So we'll go down here, let's see, and this is, you're probably used to this, but I want to go down to here, right here. This is the statement of theory. This is the theorem, what do you call that? Hypothesis. This is the hypothesis of John. You find it right at the beginning. You'll find these hypothesi in Greek documents, almost always. It says, John testifies concerning me, Christ, saying, this is he whom I said, he who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me. And we're going to get into this. This is really deep stuff. For the fullness of his grace we have received one blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but God, the one and only who is at the Father's side, has made him known. We'll see more of this. Now this was John's testimony from the Jews of Jerusalem. Okay. This is the statement. There's the statement. The statement's down here at the bottom.
You're looking for the word predicate?
Predicate? No. Let's see. Did I pass it or was that it? Okay. The point is this. If you go back and you look, and we're going to look at this in more detail, but I think that is a hypothesis that basically when we look in the details of the translation, we're going to see that Jesus Christ is not only called Christ, but he's called God, and that the Logos, and I'm going to go into more detail on this, but okay, a tantalizing foretaste. The first chapter of John is a thesis, and that thesis is the body, which will eventually lead to a telos, and it's an unstated telos, but you notice what it says in John 20. This is the end. And if you want, this could almost be considered I'm not going to call it a full-out conclusion, but Jesus told him, because you've seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and have yet believed. Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe, that you may pisteo, be convinced, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by being convinced, you have life in his name. That, okay, like I said, there's not supposed to be a stated telos. But that's about as clear a stated telos as you're going to get. And the most important thing is this. Don't you have a question right here from this little statement?
What were the other signs?
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Okay, you can't look at this document. Okay, it's not, John's purpose is not to give you a historical account. It is a historical account, don't get me wrong. But his purpose is not to just list all the stuff that Jesus did and tell you in context what he did. That's not his point. His point is to give you 7 specific signs, logos and telos, with emoegi statements, that specifically point to the telos. And this is, okay, I'm not going to say the Greeks do not like stated telos. This is not really a stated telos. This does not say, in conclusion, this is right, but it sure gives you a pretty cool sense in a dialogue, in a set narrative, what the point of John is. So that's what we're driving to. And all the other cool stuff in between, let's just take a quick look. Like I said, John's argument. The miracles are signs. Anyway, this is the first one. 3rd day of the wedding took place. And this is where he changed water into wine. The first miraculous sign used before the king of Galilee, this first one, revealed his glory. Now, what's interesting about this is this was an unplanned sign, an unplanned miracle, right? Or appears to be. Now, Jesus never did nothing unplanned, I don't think. And I don't think this is the first. We like to say, oh, this is the first one. No. This is the first one that John writes about, right? Because this is the one that's important in the focus. Yes, sir.
Yeah, his mother obviously knew he had something because she was expecting him to change the water into wine, so she must have seen him do other things beforehand.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's not like okay, yeah, hey, I know you're going to shot a bow and arrow, but, I want you to shoot this bow and arrow and put it through the thing, right? Jesus, do it. Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, Mom ain't going to embarrass her son in front of the big crowd, right? And let's see. The second miraculous sign Jesus performed, the healing of the royal official's son, and the I am. These are implied I am statements. When we get to the actual I am statements, this is what I just want to point out. We're going to see more. Okay, this is a trick. Maybe not a trick. The point of this is, what does it express when a person is able to do a miraculous event or sign? What are you expressing? You are expressing your existence as who you are, right? And when we go back, and I know I'm maybe a little bit confusing, but when we go back to the beginning and we start looking at the translation, we're going to see from the very beginning that Christ is equated with God. And when I do that, I'll draw you some pictures. We'll talk about C.S. Lewis and the 4-dimensional God projected to 3-dimension kind of thing, because we can never forget. Oh, we do all the time, right? Jesus is Jesus and the Holy Spirit and God, right? Are they separate? No, they're not separate at all, right? They're, like C.S. Lewis says, it's a 4-dimensional God, it's the God, but when you see the God in 3 dimensions, it's got 3 aspects, right? Because it has to. That's the way that's the way the creation is. So when you look at Jesus, and this is what John tells us from the very beginning, when you look at Jesus, you are looking at God, and therefore, by doing miraculous signs, what is Jesus doing? He is making a conclusive I am statement. And then we are going to get to the actual ego eimi statements. That's why I like to keep the right. Yeah, I know, I'm giving you a tennis class. The Sabbath healing invalid at Bathsheba. Okay. Second one. Yeah, I know. I don't know if this is worthwhile. The fourth is the feeding of the multitude. Okay, where is the I am? There's an I am statement. There it is. Did I skip the other one accidentally? I should have marked them. I didn't mark it right. Because is the first one, I think, is this. So he feeds the multitude, and the first ego eimi statement he makes is, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will never go hungry, and he who believes in me, who is convinced of me, will never be thirsty. Like I said, we're going to look at these in detail. But when he says this, when Jesus makes this statement, what is he literally saying in Greek?
I am God.
Well, not only is he saying, I am God, he is saying that he is the bread of life. Literally. A Greek. Okay, we in English can do our little highfalutin maga maga, right? We figure, okay, we're thinking spiritually and supernaturally and esoterically, symbolically, euphemistically. When a Greek person hears this, they're like, he said he's the bread of life. Right?
In a starvation culture probably means a lot more.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, because that is really true. And
Wouldn't you think people would say, yeah, that guy's nuts?
yeah.
Because I can't eat you for my dinner and I'm hungry.
Well, he just fed the multitude.
I know, but you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, though.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah. To us, okay, from, the Greeks, okay, now this is really important to think about. I'll bring this out because it's important. Remember I told you, Jesus Christ is a Greek thinker, and I think God's a Greek thinker. We should be Greek thinkers. The point is that he is saying this literally from a Greek standpoint. We understand it in other ways too, which shows some Latin kind of euphemism and our kind of euphemistic thing going on there. But it is literal, right? This is meant to be literal. We can go into other details about the creation and other things, but literally Jesus is saying that he is that, which, as you expressed, it means he's God.
No, why did he say, I am life? Why did he couch it in symbolic terms?
Well, we're going to get even further than that, because, the thing is that what you said is right, but he isn't just life, right? What is bread of life? It's something that sustains you, right? So it's and when we dissect this and pull it out within the context of the translation itself, I think we even see it more powerfully. But the big deal is his statement. These are not, I think it's horrible, but this is the way we see Jesus, right? We think of Jesus, he's a teacher, and he's throwing out these really smart things, right, for us to think about or whatever and do. But he's not, he's not like Socrates or Bassanese or Soren Kierkegaard, right? No! This guy is God, right? And so what he's doing, and remember the 7 arguments, logos to Telos, to point us to an ultimate. And this is a build-up. So, it's pretty interesting he made wine first. I like that idea. And then, he was healing, and then, we get to feeding. But the point of the feeding of the people wasn't just to feed the people. It was to allow him to make this statement. Yes, sir.
In that culture too, wouldn't bread have been the main staple of every meal you eat when you eat? I mean, it's...
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, we miss it because we do our grace, right? We do grace. But when the Jewish father is supposed to do grace over the food, the shallot and the wine, blessed be he who provides the grain of the earth. I think I've got it pretty close. And blessed is he who provides the wine of the fruit of the vine, right? And it's
Lord's Prayer, give us our daily bread.
Yeah, and the daily bread. Okay. When we read that, we want to read that as feed me, right? But it don't mean just feed me, because it's the bread of life. We got a Jesus, a Greek thinker, and it's obviously he's moving in different worlds that are really cool because there's a lot of depth in here. Anyway, I think this is really interesting. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, will have the light of life. I am the light of the world. You know, that's very, we need to talk, we'll talk about Mysterion. What did he just say?
I'm your mystery.
You're right on. He said, I am the mystery. In fact, he just told you that he is the answer to every mystery. Isn't that interesting? I am the light of the world. You see, if we read that in the English context, we kind of miss the point. But you know, look what the Pharisee said. Are you appearing as your own witness? Your testimony is not valid. I think it's really funny. John, you know, one of the things they say about literature, ancient literature, right, is when you see the negatives, that usually proves that it's real, right? Why would John include that unless it was real, right? That would just, and there's more things. We'll see more things. It's just fun stuff, right? I am the light of the world. Followed by a Socratic argument and a witness who takes him. Let's go. A man blind from birth. A man blind from birth. Who has sinned? Let's see. Where is he? While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So in this case, the ego eimi statement occurs before the proof text of the sign. Because not only did he provide, you know, we would say, yeah, light you can see, but he's also talking about intellectual light or the spiritual light. Yeah, like I said, we're going to go, this is a foretaste, right? Sign 5, I am the gate. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. And we'll talk more about this within a context of Hebrew culture. There's really beautiful things in the Gospel of John. Amazingly beautiful. At the resurrection of Lazarus, I am the resurrection and the life. You know, you said, why didn't he say he was just the life, right? Well, here he does say he is the life, but you notice there's more to it than that, right? Because with life, what happens? You eventually die. Everything dies, right? But he says, no. He is the anastasis, we'll look at it, but it's rising from the dead, literally rising from the dead. And I know there's just a few others, and we're out of time. So, anyway, the last one, there's raising Lazarus. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And finally, at the very end, yeah, well, let's get that. But the last one, we're going to go into this in detail. The very last one is resurrection. The resurrection. And the resurrection proves, okay, I'm throwing it out for you, but that's the Logos and Telos. The end point is the resurrection absolutely proves that Jesus Christ is God. And that's, if you want, the Telos. What we go through of John in the Gospel. And as we go through it, we'll look through these things. We'll see in detail some of the more important and cozy points. Anyway, thanks, Father, for your word. We pray, look after us this week. In your name we pray. Amen. I don't know how effective this was. If you got negatives on this, that's cool. But I think I can shoot translation stuff better. But we'll try to, I don't know, sometimes more interactive is more fun anyway. But
We can laugh at your spelling.